360 Talk Radio for Women and the Boardroom. This is Dawn Abbott with another episode of The Visionary Woman, Empowering Your Success Through EOS. Just a reminder, EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. This is a system for running all aspects of your business. So we're talking about a bunch of tools and disciplines that, when put together and implemented in the right process, you will gain vision, traction, and healthy, cohesive team throughout your organization. And so all of my shows here have been about introducing the 6 key components of any entrepreneurial organization. Those 6 key components are vision, people, data, and when those things become strong, all of the issues you have what is a very transparent organization. And once transparency is there and you have defined who you are and where you're going and how you're going to get there with your vision, you've defined who rock stars are, the right people in the right seats in your organization, and you've started collecting data on how your business is running in each of the areas with measurables. This creates this transparency in which all the issues come bubbling to the surface. And so we're going to talk about 2 things today. We're going to talk about issues and traction. And so the issues component, which is the 4th key component, we talked about process last week. I skipped over and went over to process. And next week, please be sure to tune in, download the 360 Talk Radio app for 360 Talk Radio for Women app is the best way to hear this content. But be sure to stay tuned next week because I have a special guest on the show, Lisa Gonzalez, who wrote the book Process in the Traction Library. And so she will be on the show and she will dig deeper into process and some of the reasons people sort of fight against that and the way to solve those things. So that's next week. This week, we're going to talk about the 4th and the 6th key component, which is issues is the 4th key component, and the 6th is traction. So let's start with issues. So really the idea here is there's numerous issues in every entrepreneurial organization. And if you don't have issues, that in itself is an issue. That means you're probably not being open and honest about your business. Because I assure you, after running a business for 32 years, I always have issues coming up in my business. Some of those get swept under the rug. And, there ends up being this big ball of duct tape and twine in your office of all the issues you're sort of trying to not acknowledge that are there. Or you're seeing and solving the ones that are dumpster fires that have to be solved immediately and critically. So really this issues component is 2 things. It's the issues list. And I brought that up a bit in the vision component when we talked about the issues list. But what's really important is that you have a culture and you've created a company in which everyone is okay raising their hand and calling out and acknowledging we have issues and we need to solve them, and giving them a place in which they know those issues are going to be dealt with. So the issues list can be departmental issues, it can be leadership team, company issues. Regardless of how you do it, you want an issues list that's accessible to everyone in the organization. So every time they have a headache, hassle, choke point, when they're trying to do their job, or they see something can come up that could be better, that could be solved, they have a place to put that, and they know there's a time and space that will be dealt with. So that's the first key thing, right? And so next is, how do you solve these issues? We use a tool called IDS. That stands for Identify, Discuss, and Solve. And so what is typical, if you're honest, in a normal meeting when you're talking about issues is that somebody brings it up and you start discussing it ad nauseum, right? You, for the next hour, potentially go into all the different problems it's solving and who said what about the issue and when was the last time it caused a problem and how it's really creating issues in this department or for the customer or all of those things, right? You start discussing why it's a problem. And then you start discussing all these potential maybe solutions, or we should, or maybe this, da, 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 da. So you start discussing and then everyone leaves the meeting and you think, okay, that was a good meeting. We discussed the heck out of that. But no one's walked away with clarity and commitment of what the solution is and who's doing what by what date. And a month later, here you are in a meeting discussing this issue again, as if you never spent an hour previously discussing it. And so IDSing is really a way to get to the root cause, because what you end up doing is there's a root problem and you start solving symptoms, right? Because you don't dig deep into the real cause of the problem. And so you start solving symptoms, or you never solve it at all, right? And so maybe the symptom goes away, but gosh, there's potentially other symptoms, or the problem still keeps coming up. So the very first thing in IDSing is the I, identify. So what you want to do is spend a good chunk of your time identifying the root cause, asking questions, lots of questions, digging deeper, 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 and getting to the dirty root of that issue. So some of the questions I suggest are, which of the 6 key components it's in? That can be a very valuable data. Like, is this a data problem? Like we're not collecting the right information? Is this a people problem? And if it's a people problem, is it a right person? They're unaligned with the core values. Like, is that the problem? They don't fit here? Or is the problem right seat? Like they don't have the want, and capacity to do something in their job? Or is this a process issue? Like they haven't been trained. There's not a proper process for this. And that's why we keep reinventing the wheel and having these headaches. So you really dig into which of the key components, and that gives you valid information, a whole bunch of information on what the potential problem is. Because if we're just saying such and such is not good at their job, there's all kinds of solutions and they might be the wrong ones. But if we dig in and realize it's just a simple capacity, you know what? She needs a training class on this one part of her job because she's the right person. She fits the organization. Everybody loves her. She's doing all these other things great. Okay, so the solution is get her a training class, right? Or if it's a process problem, let's write a process for training her on this part of her job. So the solutions can become very different depending on which of the 6 key components it's in. Another way to sort of determine the root is ask why 5 times at least, right? Why is that an issue? And why is that an issue? Tell me more about why that's an issue, until you dig in and you keep going back to, well, the issue with her not doing her job well is causing a problem with this form. And then a problem in this form is causing a hiccup in manufacturing. And the hiccup in manufacturing is causing late deliveries. And, so really dig in, and that's another good way. So one of the things that we suggest is when you're just starting out in IDSing, you have to sort of swing that pendulum to the far opposite of what you've been doing. And what you've been doing is just discussing willy-nilly, right? So get real structural around it and start saying, okay, 2 sentences. Whoever has the issue and brings the issue up, this is my issue. And ask them to sort of define the issue by what a solution would be. That's a good way to kind of get to what the actual problem is what does solved look like? Tell me in 2 sentences. And so then everyone at the table in the meeting will go around and ask questions until they have no questions anymore. And then you get to the D, that's discuss. And discuss is really, maybe everyone has an idea for a solution. So you all share those ideas. Any quick discussion about what the solution might be is where, now that you've identified the issue. So that's what discuss is. And then the S, solve, is stating the person with the issue now says, okay, the solution I'm choosing is this, and we are going to do X, Y, Z by this date, right? And so, and then at the end of the meeting, which I'm going to talk about the meeting agenda next and where IDS falls in that meeting, but at the end of the meeting, you are going to recap all of those solutions or all of those to-dos that are creating the solution and who's doing them by what date, right? So that you walk out of that meeting crystal clear about what the solution is, who's doing what to solve it, and by what date it should be expected to be done. And that's the way you solve problems for once and for all, and you stop solving them over and over. And the other thing that you'll find is when you get good at this and you get at the root cause, you've probably solved 23 other problems with just solving that one problem, especially when you're talking about people problems. So when you have people problems, it can cause problems all over the organization. And if you can fix that at the root, then all of a sudden, all of these little headaches and hassles that you've never even dealt with on the issues list start falling away. And you get to them and you go, oh, you know what, that's solved because of the last issue we solved, 3 weeks ago. So that is IDSing and the issues list. So now let's move to the sixth key component, which is traction. There's no accident that opposite of vision is the component of traction on the model wheel. So vision is at the top, traction is at the bottom, because vision without traction is hallucination. You can decide who you are and where you're going and how you're going to get there all you want, but unless you have traction towards that, unless you have discipline and accountability, then good luck with that vision, right? So traction really consists of two things, sort of the cadence or the pulse of the organization. So firstly, we have quarterly meetings. So we have leadership team and departmental quarterly meetings every quarter. Because if you know human nature and you've seen this in your own organization and yourself, like every 90 days, everyone starts to sort of fray, right? You're all on the same page and you're all striving towards goals, and you're excited about the goals, and you've set great rocks, and you're gung-ho, right? But then what happens is just human nature as it starts to fray, right? You go back to work and get, thrown off and forget all about how excited you were, or you put the goals or the rocks is what we call our quarterly goals. We call them rocks. I've talked about that before. So when you set these rocks and you're excited about them, and then you go back to work and you either hit them right out the gate running, and then, they sort of fall away, right? Because you get back into, okay, this has to be done and all my day-to-day job. Or the other thing that happens is you go straight back and work, hauls you away from that excitement or that motivation to get the rock done. And then, oh gosh, we are 55 days into the quarter and now I have 5 days to complete my rock. Either way, not good. So we're going to set up a couple of things. So first of all, that quarterly reset where the department, the leadership team, they're coming together and they're going to have a great quarterly session where they're going to really clean up the issues list. They're going to spend a good chunk of time working on issues and starting the quarter off well. They're going to celebrate the rocks that they've accomplished for last quarter, and they're going to set new goals and rocks, new revenue and profit goals, new measurable goals, and 3 to 7 max rocks for the quarter, right? So the projects or the goals that need to be accomplished for that quarter to get you to your annual goals. So that's what that quarterly meeting looks like. And then the next thing we need to set up is spikes of accountability all quarter long and having really great quality meetings. So these we call the level 10 meeting. And so with the level 10 meeting, what we're talking about is a weekly meeting in which the leadership team gets together, or departments get together. Eventually, we start off with the leadership team, and the agenda is very specific. So the agenda starts with, so let me do a precursor, a caveat to the level 10 agenda, the level 10 meeting. The first thing we want to make sure to have a really good level 10 meeting is that it's the same day and the same time, and it starts on time and it ends on time. And by on time, I mean you're sitting down. If your meeting starts at 9 a.m., you're sitting down and kicking into the agenda at 9 a.m. sharp, if not 8:59. You're not still chatting and catching up, right? That's all done prior. You're ready to hit the ground running. And so then we head into the agenda. So the agenda starts with a segue, and that's a 5-minute segue. So very quick. And I suggest when you're starting this out, again, getting away from the agenda that's never on time, etc. That's the agenda that's typical, is you start getting really structured with this agenda and you set a timer, right? Until you get really good at it, right? Swing the pendulum to the far opposite side of where you've been so you can write it eventually. So first of all, segue, 5 minutes. This is, you start the meeting with each person going around and stating one professional and one personal piece of good news. So a lot of times people think, oh, that's touchy-feely, or we don't need to do that. Well, let me just give you some words of wisdom here. It's really not so much about touchy-feely or getting to know each other. While that's a great byproduct, and that will happen, this is really more about getting your mind off of what you were just doing, right? Working in the business, doing your job, to now we are in a new space. We need to reset, stop thinking of that, and understand that now we're working on the business. So the segue is a great way to do that. The other thing that it does, it's kind of tricks your brain into the positive mental mindset, right? So if what you were dealing with right before you came to the meeting was a big struggle or a hard conversation or whatever that looked like, a bad day getting your kids to school, whatever it was, this is really like, lets you look back at your week and celebrate 2 pieces of really great things that are happening. And when your mind is now in that working on the business and in a positive mind frame, you're better equipped to be great at this meeting. So 5 minutes there. Scorecard, 5 minutes. So I want to tell you that these first 5 items on the agenda are 5 minutes each. So this is a quick 25 minutes. So these are places where the meetings can get hijacked. So the scorecard review is simply going through the items on your scorecard and saying if they're on track or off track. If they are off track, there's no time for discussion at this point. It might be irrelevant to everyone at this meeting that scorecard measurable is off track, or it might be really important that we discuss it. If it's off track, you drop it to the issues list. On your L10 issues list, you drop it down. If it's important, it will be prioritized and it will be discussed at that point. So a way that gets hijacked, right, is somebody says it's off track, but that's because such and such was on vacation, and when we do this, and then and all of a sudden now everyone's discussing and talking about a scorecard measurable, and you're not leaving the time required or needed to really get to the right issues this week. Okay, so on track, off track. If it's off track, drop it down. Just drop it down to the issues list, okay? And then the ROC review is next. So this is setting up that spikes of accountability that I talked about with your ROCs. Instead of setting them at the beginning of the quarter and coming back at the end of the quarter and saying, are they done? what you're doing is you're setting up a plan for your rocks. What needs to be done weekly for me to get this done? Or if this is a rock that I need to hit once a month, what's the date I'm going to hit that? Or is this something I'm going to do 10 minutes a day at the beginning of every day? Whatever your plan for getting that rock done is how you then report if it's on track or off track. So if you've done the things on your plan for this week, it's on track. If you haven't, it's off track. If it's off track, what do? Drop it down to the issues list. Now, another reason a rock can be off track is that you ran into an issue, right? You were to schedule a certification class for all the engineers on the team, and you found out that that certification class is not going to be offered until mid-2024, and it's August of 2023. And so that's not going to get done this quarter, right? And so when you've run into this, you can say off track and you drop it down, and that's the time and place you can decide as a team, because we can't accomplish that, what are we going to do? We're going to solve it like an issue. We're going to identify, discuss, and solve for that certification class. Are we taking another one? Are we waiting? What are we doing with that rock? So those are the couple reasons that a rock can be off track. But again, do not hijack a meeting explaining why your rock is off track, okay? The next 5 minutes is customer or employee headlines. These are just those things that all the leaders should know. A customer's had a great testimonial, said something great about you, or a customer is having a struggle. Or did we hear that this employee was promoted? Or, you know, this employee just did something great or special and won an award or whatever. So it's really sharing those headlines. Again, 5 minutes, just sharing so the whole leadership team is sort of kept abreast of what's going on in areas that they might not be seeing on a regular basis. Okay, last 5 minutes of this review and report section is the to-do list. These are items that are 7-day action items owned and completed by one person. So majority of the time, this to-do list will get published, will end up getting populated, that's the better word. So your to-do list will come and be populated from solving issues, most likely. So your first couple of meetings, maybe there's not a lot of to-dos, but once you start solving issues, you're going to put the solution and what's going to be done in the to-do list. And that's how that to-do list will start being populated. You want to get to the point where 90% of those 1 week to-do items are getting to done. So you're just walking through that, done, not done. That's it. If it's a not done and you need to discuss it, drop it down to the issues list. If it's a simple, I will get it done next week, change the date and move on. Okay. So again, 5 minutes to review your to-do list. Okay, then the next 60 minutes of this hour-and-a-half long meeting is IDSing. So you're going to do what I just explained. You're going to start with your issues list, and you're going to first prioritize. So you look at that issues list, and you don't need to get super technical about it. Just shout out the most important. So somebody's issue that's really important for them to solve, they're going to shout it out. And that's what I encourage everyone on the team to do, is really like fight for your issues list. If you need that solved this week, yell it out. That's what we need to solve. And so you're going to prioritize 1, 2, 3, just the first 3. Okay. Go about identifying, discussing, and solve, as I just discussed, with the first issue. Capture any to-dos that come from the solutions and put those on the to-do list. And then move to number 2. If you get to number 3, prioritize again the next 1, 2, 3, right? And it doesn't matter how many issues you solve. Some weeks you solve 1. It's big, important, and it's meaty, and it takes a bunch of time, and it's critical that got accomplished. But that's why you prioritize. and you don't prioritize by, oh, this is easy, let's talk about this because we can get it done quick. It's what's important, what's a priority issue, not what's fastest, right? That's not what you need to be solving, the easy ones. You need to be solving the ones that are causing the most headaches. And so if you solve one big meaty one, great. If you solve 20, amazing. That's really irrelevant. It's just about making sure you're prioritizing the right issues and you're getting them solved, and you're walking away with clarity and commitment as to the solution, who owns it, and when it's getting done. So that's the meat of the meeting, is that IDSing for 60 minutes. Then your conclude is another 5 minutes. So all you're doing is recapping the to-do list. What's on the to-do list because of the items that weren't done, the 10% or less that weren't done, plus the ones you added. So recapping that with who's doing it by what date, so that everybody's crystal clear. Then you want to share any cascading messages. Now, this is really important. So when you've solved an issue at the leadership team level, there could be a need for cascading the solution to the rest of the organization. It's really important to decide if it's being cascaded this week, or we're going to solve it first, or we're going to let's sit on this for a minute. Be careful about cascading too quickly. I've talked about that before, because then you can look a little bit bumbling and nobody wants to follow leaders who are wishy-washy, who report a big, this is the solution to this issue, and then change their mind next week. So be careful, make sure you're solid with this cascading message, so you can all talk about that and say, we need to cascade this message, who we're going to cascade it to, and how. Is this an email situation out to the entire organization, or is this a one-on-one conversation I need to have with these 3 people? Whatever that looks like, so everyone walks away a united front on what's being said and how it's being said and who's going to say it and all of that. And then lastly, you just rate the meeting from a 1 to 10. And a 10 is you started on time, you ended on time, you followed the agenda, and you got some issues solved. That's a 10. Or anything less, and then you can start improving, right? You can start working on having sort of the meeting czar that's really striving for this level 10 that can help you from getting off track. And that's a good, it's a good role for the integrator to sort of own the meeting, run the meeting every week, and sort of make sure that you're not getting off track. If the integrator is a person that is easily bunny trails and so forth, maybe give a job to someone else on the team that's great at noticing that, and that can keep everybody on track and on the same page about the level 10 meeting. So that is most everything I have for the level 10 agenda. That's the meeting pulse. So between those 2 things, the 90-day world with the setting of the rocks, and also you want to, each of those quarterly meetings, sort of relook at your vision traction organizer, those 8 questions, and make sure everyone still feels really good about those. That's another great agenda item on your quarterly meeting. And so your quarterly meeting is a tool review, reviewing your accountability chart, reviewing your scorecard, reviewing your vision traction organizer, making sure that that all still feels good, spending some time readjusting if it's not fitting. So you're sort of always rechecking your vision to make sure you're all on the same page. Because sometimes you're not. And if you're not, that's really important, right? And then again, you're celebrating the rocks that you've achieved for last quarter. You're resetting rocks for the next 90 days. And then the other part of traction is the level 10 meeting that we just talked about. And so that is what I have for you today on both issues and traction. And again, please join me again next week when I will have Lisa Gonzalez, the co-author of the book Process, dig in and give you some great helpful information on getting your processes documented and getting them followed by all, and some of the whys behind that. So I appreciate you listening. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great week.